It's a Marty party.
It's been a busy news week. All right. We kind of kick everything off with the daring special operations raid into Caracas, Venezuela last weekend. Wow. I think that kind of took everybody by surprise, and certainly took the illegitimate president of Venezuela, Maduro, took him by surprise for sure, I think. So a lot of people have a lot of opinions on this, and predictably it kind of falls along political lines, right? Like if you're a Republican or pro-Trump a person, you're very excited about this. And if you're a Democrat or anti-Trump person, you're very against this, right? And predictably, that's how most of these things go, is people kind of just side with whatever side that they're on. And then there is notably the Venezuelans, who are very happy about this, very, very happy about this. But, you know, how did we get here? How did we get to going in and doing another regime change, flying into another country's military base to capture their president, their sitting freaking president? Like, pretty insane. So how did we get here? Well, if you've been paying attention at all, this administration has been talking a lot about the Monroe Doctrine, right? And we can go all the way back to December 2025, all the way. I know that was like 2 weeks ago. But in December 2025, President Trump said, and this is a quote here, "The United States will never waver in defense of our homeland, our interests, or the well-being of our citizens. Today, my administration proudly reaffirms this promise under a new Trump corollary to the Monroe Doctrine, that the American people, not foreign nations nor globalist institutions, will always control their own destiny in our hemisphere." So, the Monroe Doctrine, right? Like, what is that? If the president's bringing it up and maybe you're not super familiar with it, I mean, this has been almost a week since the Maduro raid, so maybe you've heard the word or the term tossed around a little bit. The Monroe Doctrine goes back about 200 years, actually, 200 years and some change. And it was obviously named after President James Monroe. He was the 5th president of the United States. He introduced this concept that he called the Monroe Doctrine during an otherwise, was considered a pretty routine annual message that he would give to Congress. And that was on December 2nd, 1823. And I want to pause right there real quick. And if you're already sort of rolling your eyes at like, okay, so we're using this 200 plus year old document or doctrine to justify things in 2026, like what's going on? Well, I would argue that there's a lot of old things that are still very relevant. I'm a big fan of the United States Constitution and the Bill of Rights therein, and that is, even older than the Monroe Doctrine. I'm a fan of the Magna Carta. I'm a fan of the Bible. I'm a fan of all sorts of things that are really old documents that's still very, very relevant. So I think you should judge the Monroe Doctrine on the merits of what it's saying, not on just the fact that it's old. And so, continuing on with, what this doctrine is, right? It was President Monroe was warning European powers against further colonization in the Western Hemisphere. He wanted to assert that the region was no longer open to the old world conquests that were happening. And he didn't want European or other powers' influence in that region. He wanted it regarded as a sphere for the United States. That this was our backyard. Central and South America was in the Western Hemisphere, our backyard, and we don't want anybody else messing around with it. That's what the Monroe Doctrine was. This doctrine has been used by at least 9 different U.S. presidents, at least, right? And that includes Theodore Roosevelt and John F. Kennedy. And then more recently, Reagan, Trump, I think Bush Sr. used it, all sorts of different people. And I think it's, and it's been used to justify a lot of different interventions that we've had through Central and South America. It's something that has greatly impacted countries in Central and South America and the people that live there. And a lot of the things that are the way they are right now are because of things the United States did under the guise of the Monroe Doctrine over the years. Just as a side note, if you ever want some fascinating reading. Go to CIA.gov and search their archives with the term Guatemala. Man, they did some crazy stuff back in the 50s and 60s. So more contemporarily, though, the Monroe Doctrine under the Obama administration, Secretary of State John Kerry had declared that, quote, the era of the Monroe Doctrine is over. And I believe that was in 2015. And that was, I think, said shortly after President Trump had first declared his candidacy for the 2016 presidential election. So interesting timing there. Another thing that you might be hearing a lot about, like obviously that um, the quote that I gave you from President Trump to open this, that he called his take on the Monroe Doctrine the Trump corollary. Well, there was previously the Roosevelt corollary. All right. This was triggered by, this is obviously under President Theodore Roosevelt. It was triggered by European naval blockades of Venezuela in 1902 and threats against the Dominican Republic. The U.S. wanted to keep European powers out and secure stability. And notably, Roosevelt declared the U.S. would use force to correct, quote, flagrant cases of wrongdoing or impotence in the region. So the Roosevelt corollary is really where we see the justification for using force to exert our power and influence in Latin America. And this was a little bit of an escalation of the Monroe Doctrine, I believe. Not that force hadn't been used prior to this, but this was definitely another step at the time. Like the Monroe Doctrine with John Kerry saying that it was no more. FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, officially rolled back the Roosevelt corollary because of his good neighbor policy in 1934. And, when we think about this, the justifications, the Trump corollary, the justifications for using the Monroe Doctrine in modern times, those are definitely up for debate, right? I think that it's a good debate to have. There's a lot of good reasons to, keep our influence and exert power in this region and make sure other foreign powers are not exerting influence and using it as a base of operations in our own backyard. I think there's a lot of good arguments there. And then there's some other questions about, hey, should we be more concerned about things here at home, or is it worth the money? Is the juice worth the squeeze, or is it leaving us open to potential new forever wars like Iraq and Afghanistan? There's a lot of valid questions that should be debated. When we go back to 1823, when it was first signed, though, think about the threat that was there, right? Like for President Monroe, this is 1823. This is only 13 years after the War of 1812, where we had to prove it that we're seriously, guys, we're independent. We're our own country now. And, the Brits burned our White House down and all that sort of stuff. This is still, Monroe was one of the founding fathers. This is still in the lifetime of people that fought for their independence from a European superpower. And so by establishing this doctrine, it was like, hey, guys, yeah, you not only can you not have United States, you're also not going to mess around with all this other stuff in our own backyard to corner us. No, this is our corner of the world, right? And you better stay out. That's what the intent of this was. And, when you look at Central and South America, there's a lot of reason that European powers had a vested interest there. There's a reason today that places like Russia and China and Iran have a vested interest in places like Venezuela, in the wider Central and South American region. There's a reason we want to protect those things, and we want to be the main influence, not Russia or China. So I think when we look at the different reasons for doing this, right? Like, why take Maduro? Well, simply, it kills multiple birds with one stone. Most importantly, it denies access to resources to our major adversaries. It makes critical impacts to their economy and their ability to flex power. And I'm specifically talking about Russia and China. I think China, 14% of their oil imports are from Venezuela. That just got taken off the map. If you don't think that that's going to affect China and their economy and their stability, you're crazy. That is a big chunk that's going to make prices skyrocket. That sucks for them. And for Russia and some of the things that they're doing, and even Iran. Iran doesn't import their oil, but Iran uses it as a base for them to train terrorist organizations. They use their banks to siphon money to these different illegitimate organizations. Like Iran has a lot of influence there. I mean, look at Maduro himself. Like the guy was an evil guy, not popular. I mean, he ran Venezuela into the ground over the past 25 years. There's a reason there's 7.9 million Venezuelans that had to flee that country. They didn't want to leave. The things got really bad. Food prices skyrocketed. Inflation was through the roof. They couldn't afford anything. Violence and particularly political violence got, really out of hand very quickly. Maduro's administration, Maduro's regime was taking political prisoners. Not a good guy. He cozied up to narco terrorists. He basically Venezuela became a narco terrorist state. He was allowing the sort of resources of a nation to be used by cartels and on behalf of cartels. It's a huge problem. And basically everyone who's anyone in the world of terrorism had that as an open ground for training. It was like what Afghanistan was pre-2001. It was like, hey, you got a little terrorist group, you need a place to train, you want a place you're not going to get hassled. Oh, and nice proximity to America. Yeah, come on over to Venezuela here. We got a spot for you. And, all the resources that are there besides oil, Russia and China, they had their people all over that place. I mean, the night that Maduro was taken, there was an envoy from China that had come to meet with him. So this is a problem. It's not so much about just the drugs, right? That's part of it. Venezuela is a huge exporter of illegal drugs, particularly into the United States. It's not just about the oil. It's definitely about the oil, but it's not so much that we need the oil. It's that we want to deny that to our adversaries. We want to weaken our adversaries by taking away something that is critical to them being, capable of messing with us. So I think, like I said, it kills a lot of birds with one stone. We've done this before. You've seen us do regime change in Iran. You've seen it in Chile. You've seen it in Guatemala, Libya. I mean, I would argue World War II even was a regime change, right? Like we were trying to take Hitler out of power and defeat his regime. It's happened a lot. Of course, we partook in regime change in Iraq, and that was kind of a mess. Now, I don't lose, I'm somebody that fought in Iraq, right? Like that directly impacted my life. And, I have to live with the fact that now myself and just about every other American looks back on that war and says, yeah, that probably wasn't the right move. But you know what I don't lose any sleep over? Saddam Hussein being taken out of power. I mean, like Maduro, Saddam Hussein was a horrible dictator. He carried out numerous atrocities against ethnic minorities in Iraq. He cozied up to some of the worst people and adversaries to the United States. Like, I don't lose a wink of sleep over the fact that Saddam Hussein, at the hands of American forces, was captured, and at the hands of his own Iraqi people was hung from the end of a rope. Don't feel bad about that at all. Unfortunately, the rest of the execution of the war in Iraq went on for way too long. And to be quite frank with you, we still have people there to this day. And I don't think that's changing anytime soon. Because now I think it's seen as a way for us to have a permanent presence in the Middle East and exert power in the region against places like Syria. And it's probably convenient right now with what's going on in Iran. We're going to get to that. So, this has all happened before, sometimes successful, sometimes not successful. And, I think that we have to address the fact that, the Trump administration ran on really a domestic ticket. They wanted it was America first. It was, we need to take care of things here at home. And that's really why I think he was voted into office, is because people were really frustrated with the way things were here in America, on a variety of different fronts. And when we get into these like new foreign interventions, regime change, things like that, I think it's fair to say like, hey, isn't that kind of getting away from what he said he was going to do when he was running? Yeah, I mean, I think that's a fair criticism, but I'll also point out like, hey, this does impact the middle class in small town America. Like taking Maduro out and exerting control over Venezuela improves life for people in rural America. This is where I grew up. I grew up in the middle of a small town in, Huron, South Dakota, right? Like middle of eastern South Dakota, small farm town. Like I know what has happened in those areas. I know how rural America has been ravaged by drugs, absolutely ravaged by drugs. I know how prices at the pump can impact everything from a family's ability to get to work in a place where there's no public transportation in rural America. You have to drive everywhere. And sometimes you're driving to other towns to get your kid to school and stuff. And if gas goes from, up to $6, $7, $8 a gallon, that's real harm to rural American families, blue collar folks, lower income, middle class folks. And, this makes our energy situation even more secure. It was very secure before. We have plenty of our own oil. We get oil from a lot of other places too, but now this is a little bit more into the mix. It's only going to further drive prices down. And I think last time I looked at the pump, it was like $2.86 a gallon, which not too shabby. I mean, I kind of, in my personal view, anything under $3 is like, good price for gas, and so it potentially goes down even more, takes a chunk out of the cartel's ability to infuse drugs into this country and particularly rural America. And, I think it's going to have potentially good economic impacts. So overall, this was, I think, a win for people here in America. You know who else it was a win for? Venezuelans. Have you seen the footage? Venezuelans in this country and all over the world, they are crying and dancing in the streets. They are so happy. I am so happy for them. I'm a big believer in people's ability to pursue life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I think that representative democracy, the ideals of a republic, should be America's greatest export. I think hope should be our greatest export. See how good we have it in America, and we have a representative democracy. No, we're not perfect, but man, we got it really good, all things considered. We want everybody to have that hope and that opportunity and just everything that comes along with that. And that's been denied to Venezuelans for 25 years now. Now they wake up. They woke up this week with a new hope that maybe the ones that aren't home can go home, and the ones that are still in Venezuela, that maybe they're going to have a better life going forward. This is huge. This is huge for them. I'm happy for them. Even if you don't think the United States should be involved in everything, okay, fine. But I am happy for Venezuelans that they have a new day and that they are excited about this. To me, that really plays into my calculus behind, I support the fact that we went in and grabbed Maduro. Now, I think it's completely fair to also question executive overreach in this. But I will remind you that this has not been an issue just with Trump. Okay. You have to recognize, like, if you're upset about Trump exerting executive power to go in and conduct regime change and military operations in and around Venezuela, if you're mad about that and think that that's executive overreach, then you also have to recognize that since the 2001 National Defense Authorization Act, which included an authorization for use of military force in response to 9/11, that AUMF has been abused by every president since. It was abused by Bush Jr. It was abused by Obama. It was abused by President Trump the first term. It was abused by Biden. And it's, I would argue, being abused again in Trump's second term. Every president since 9/11 has abused that AUMF and used it to justify foreign interventions around the world, not just Afghanistan. So it's fair to say, hey, we're concerned about executive overreach. And to that, I will say, hey, you know how you rein in executive power and executive overreach? You know that co-equal branch of the government, the legislative branch, Congress? Hey, get off your asses. Start holding presidents accountable. Not just President Trump, every president before and after. Presidents, by virtue of what they do, are going to try to wield as much power as they can. They're going to try to collect as much power and influence as they can within the executive branch. Your job in the legislative branch is to provide a counterbalance to that. There is a system of checks and balances in this country between the executive branch, the legislative branch, and the judicial branch, and it is imperative that each branch of the government takes those extremely seriously, because it is the bedrock of our government, of our freedom. We need those checks and balances. And so, Congress, what are you doing? I mean, you've been passing the buck on this since the early 2000s. You've been letting presidents run roughshod around the world with our military using the 2001 AUMF as the justification. Do your jobs, okay? And there's plenty of people in Congress right now who have been around since that 2001 AUMF. Do better, okay? Like I said, I'm in support of the fact that we went and took Maduro out of power, but I also recognize that executive overreach is something we need to keep an eye on and actively counter, not just with this administration, but every administration. All right. And the other valid concern that I think is out there is, hey, me personally, I still want a little bit more information on what's next. Now, I don't expect to get some classified briefing on what we're doing in Venezuela, but I do expect some broad strokes accountability to the American public on, hey, when we say we're going to run Venezuela for a while, well, what do you exactly mean? Who's doing what exactly are we responsible for, and all of that? And how do we prevent this slipping and sliding into a situation where all of a sudden the 82nd Airborne is jumping into take an airfield in Venezuela, and we've got the 4th ID doing presence patrols around Caracas, and all of a sudden we're in the middle of another insurgency quagmire, right? It should be noted, Venezuela is not Iraq, okay? There's not this Sunni Shiite schism, the religious tensions and all of that. It is, as you've heard people say, a homogenous people. So that reduces the chances of all-out civil war happening, but it doesn't eliminate them. And I want reassurances that we're not going to get into another protracted forever war that costs the blood of Americans, young Americans, and our treasure in this United States. And even if we were to say, hey, we need to have a bigger military presence there, again, I think I would be against that. But if we did, okay, what are the defined success criteria? What is winning look like? What does winning look like? Right? Like, what are the criteria to win that? What is the outcome that we desire from intervening in Venezuela? I need more details on all of that. So, I mean, taking Maduro out, good, great, amazing. Let's keep a check on executive power. And hey, Trump administration, let's get a little bit more detail on what we're going to do now that we did take Maduro out of power. Would love some more clarity there. Okay, so the last thing that I'll say on that is, man, I just got to take a little drink of coffee here. We got the owl mug tonight. I got a family of owls that lives in my yard. They're amazing. Keep the pests at bay. Love listening to them in the summer with the windows open. They hoot all night. It's amazing. Got an owl mug. Still need to up my coffee game, but it's doing the job. Last thing I'll say on Venezuela. Everybody that you talk to, Republicans or Democrats in Congress that got the briefing on this, anybody that knows anything about military operations, looks at what the military did to pull this off and is extremely impressed, as they should be. This will go down, and rightly so, as one of the greatest helicopter raids in history, in world history. It's one of the most daring military operations of the 21st century, for sure. The level of coordination and rehearsal that was required to do this with no American lives lost. There's about a half dozen guys that got injured, I believe, and there was some damage to a helicopter. But the fact that we got out of there without some sort of 1993 Mogadishu Black Hawk Down sort of situation is pretty incredible. And I just, I can't give the military enough credit for what they did. Everybody from Cybercom doing their thing. I'm sure the CIA and NSA were also getting busy in there to enable this. And then every branch of the military took part. I mean, just hats off, guys and gals. Like that, that's some impressive stuff. And it rightly should strike fear into the hearts of any adversary we have out there about what we're capable of. And then a special thanks to the guys on those helicopters, the guys that were actually boots on the ground doing that raid. These are some of the best that we have in our United States military. They are the best in the world at what they do. Okay. I don't know who specifically was on that, like individual names of people or whatever, but I've got more than a few people that I know in that organization that I kind of wondered to myself, oh, I wonder if he was on this, good on him. I mean, just for the guys that did get to go on this, just so you know, this is like a once in a lifetime, like this is a history making operation. And there's thousands of people that will serve in special operations in any given year, and they will not get the opportunity to perform a mission of this magnitude. So for the guys that got selected to perform this mission, they would have been very excited. And the pressure, of course, was going to be enormous to get it right and not embarrass the United States. I mean, I'm sure that was never even a thought that crossed their mind, but like the pressure was enormous and they stood up to the challenge. And you just think all those rehearsals they were doing going all the way, back a couple of months, I believe they've been rehearsing this. They built a compound that reflected the one that Maduro was in and, just rehearsed and rehearsed and rehearsed over and over and over again. And just imagine getting the final go and you're boarding these helicopters. I mean, I can just feel the exhaust of the helicopter on my face. I can hear the beating of the rotors that lift off. If you were on one of the 60s, riding in a door, feet dangling out over the ocean and then over the Venezuelan jungle, the guys in the 47s just looking out the back, that crew gunner for the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment looking out. And then as you get closer to Caracas, you start seeing the horizon light up from all the gun runs and bombs that were being dropped on sites that could potentially threaten the assault force. And just seeing that, I bet those crew gunners probably had to open up a few different times, and those guys sitting in there, they're getting amped up. They're a little bit nervous, but mostly excited. And like, this is what I was fucking born to do. The envy of everybody in special operations, the envy of anybody that's ever wanted to do something great on behalf of their country, at least in a military sort of capacity. And they were the ones that were there. And then at some point, as you're getting close, they give out the 1 minute call and that finger gets held up and you start doing little checks and just reassuring yourself like, hey, I've already checked my kit 1,000 times. I'm going to check it one more time. I'm ready to go. Start adjusting yourself a little bit because it was probably a long flight. And you start getting yourself ready, stretching the muscles a little bit, adjusting yourself in the helicopter. And then the 30 seconds call. The 30 seconds call comes out. Now you're finding your safety line. You're checking everything one more time and you feel those helicopters just seconds later start to flare and either land, or I don't know if they roped or they landed, but either way, it's right out. It's landing on the X, and then it's a sprint through that. And they killed, it sounds like, up to 80 or 90 Cuban security guards. Like those Cuban security guards, they didn't stand a fucking chance. Like these are the best shooters on earth. Incredibly competent. And I have seen these guys clear buildings, conduct close quarters combat in person. I'm telling you, there is nothing like it. It's nothing like you've even seen in the movies. They are so fast. They run through buildings. It's incredible to watch. It's incredible what they are capable of. The most competent force on earth for something like this. And they got their guy, they got jackpot. They got Maduro. They went and grabbed a sitting, although illegitimate, but a sitting president of a foreign nation out of his own fucking house and brought him back to the United States to face justice. That's awesome. That is fucking cool. In the dead of night, I think they were on the ground for no more than 30 minutes. The whole operation took less than 3 hours. Like, these guys are pros, professionals. Really, really impressive. Hats off to those guys and everybody that supported that mission. Extremely impressive.
It's a Marty party. It's a Marty party. It's a Marty party.